Well, looking at Park Geun-hye now, she's left the presidential palace and returned to her private residence in Seoul after the country's highest court removed her from office. Bloomberg's Japan and Korea managing editor is Brian Fowler. He is in Tokyo. Brian, at a time when North Korea is making quite a lot of noise, China's objecting to the deployment of the so-called THAAD or THAAD missile system there in the south. Is Park's departure being seen as a negative in terms of creating a leadership vacuum, or perhaps there's an upside in all this?
Well, Rish, I think it's really some of both. I mean, clearly there is a little bit of a vacuum in the sense that we have a caretaker government until we have the elections in May. But keep in mind that Park herself was kind of on the back burner ever since Parliament voted to impeach her back in December. And even before that, she was rather invisible as a leader. So I think, if anything, Friday's impeachment clears away a lot of the doubt and allows the government to move forward, removes a lot of uncertainty, and there's the possibility that with a new government, the Liberals returning to power for the first time in 9 years, you could actually see a little bit of an improvement in the relations with North Korea and more importantly, with China.
Yeah, and many sets of risks and challenges for the new leader that they'll have to deal with. But economically, what are the main ones?
Yeah, so I think on the economic side, you've got the policy options that are there, as well as reform. Starting with policy, we don't expect to see anything in terms of monetary policy this year vis-a-vis stimulus. If anything, with the Fed hiking rates, the BOK will probably have to lift interest rates later in the year to keep pace to prevent large outflows of capital. However, on the fiscal side, South Korea's debt to GDP ratio is among the lowest in the OECD. Its fiscal deficit was set to shrink this year, so there's a lot of wiggle room there, and people in the market are saying we could see anything from $5 billion to $10 billion in an extra budget as early as the third quarter of this year. So we may see some of that talk during the campaign season.
Yeah, Brian, obviously the country's chaebols played a big part in all of this. What does Park's removal mean for these conglomerates?
Well, we're going to have to see a little bit. So, for one thing, her impeachment now removes her from immunity. So she's going to be having to talk about what really happened with Samsung, and that could lead to some kind of reform of the chaebol system. Having said that, a lot of politicians in Korea have talked about reforming the chaebol for a long time. Once they get into office, that talk tends to simmer down with the reality of the fact that the top 10 chaebol own about 27% of all business investments. So, you know, we really won't know until we get the new administration in office how serious they will be about chaebol reform. But I think in terms of foreign policy, there's a lot to be gained from improving relations with China. China takes about 25% of South Korea's exports every year, and about half of all visitors to South Korea every year come from China. So that's a big relationship, and that could improve with the new administration.